Oh, can see Eugene now.
Hey, Jin.
Hi,
Hi,
Okay.
nice to meet
Everyone.
you.
hello.
We are live. Okay, so welcome to the Quick Connect live sessions. Quick Connect live sessions are part and parcel of the Strengths Finder Singapore Network, also working together with Ethan, who is from the Office Matters, Undelusional, Chief Philosopher. He has multiple brands under him. So in Quick Connect live sessions, we talk about topics, so it's exploratory, right, to see how that relates to us in our lives, and we get everybody's inputs. Hi, Inder. Thanks, you could
Hey,
join
Alex.
us. Awesome. So that's what Quick Connect Live is, and today's topic is on authenticity versus vulnerability. And today's topic was birthed out of 2 topics ago, where we spoke about imposter syndrome, right? So why do people feel imposter syndrome? Is it based on expectations of other people? It's based on our own expectations. What was it like for some of us when we just started coaching or becoming a new manager and things like that, right? And along the way, as a follow-up, we are thinking that authenticity and vulnerability plays a big part of why we feel imposter syndrome, right? And other areas of our life. So today, the anchor person will be Jeffers. Right, Jeffers? Not yet? Yes?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, awesome.
Yes, of course. Of course, Alex. Of course.
Okay, so
Of course.
So before we begin, maybe we just have a quick introduction around the room so that we know who everyone is, and then we can start the topic. Let's go with Paylin first, right? So Paylin, quick introduction, and should we pose a question about vulnerability and?
Yeah, how vulnerable
Yeah,
are
we
you?
should.
Well, like that's a stupid question.
That's a tough question to answer.
Okay.
We're getting right into the topic.
Yeah. What makes you feel most vulnerable?
That's a great question. Okay, so introduce yourself and what makes you feel the most vulnerable.
Okay. My name is Paylin. I'm a corporate trainer in the area of personal branding. I think what makes me most vulnerable is when I take the effort to open up, maybe about a difficulty or a challenge that I have, and then my experience is being invalidated. I think that's almost like you confess to something that people don't really think it's important at all.
It's like I really like this food. I really like this food. Everyone's like
Yeah, it's beyond the food. It's almost like you open up to something that's a little bit more intimate in terms of some experience that you have. So it doesn't feel very good. So after that, I think I would usually withdraw.
Oh, ouch.
Yeah, type 9, right? Enneagram.
Yes. Yeah.
Thanks, Paylin.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Sorry, did I
sharing.
cut you off?
Sorry?
Do you have something else to say? Sorry.
Oh, I said I wanted to say I think for the type 9, it takes effort for us to articulate our difficult experiences.
Right.
So we are already taking a lot of effort to do that.
Yeah, even though your woo, positivity, harmony, adaptability, which is all about communication, right? Makes it hard, but with the type 9, it makes it hard for you to communicate the vulnerability.
Yeah, the difficult experiences, it takes time.
Great.
Thanks.
That's great learning. Thank you.
Yendo?
Hi, my name's Yendor Felgate. I run a company called Being Human Group based in South Africa. We are a Gallup licensed training partner for Africa, and Alex has graciously reached out to us and we're connecting. So I'm delighted to be here, share some ideas with you and some of the experiences and so on. And I think to use a strength answer about my vulnerabilities, I have no relationship strengths literally in my top 10. So, you don't know what you don't know. And so sometimes you get quite a rude awakening when people give you feedback and say, well, you're actually missing other people.
Interesting.
That's
Thanks.
interesting.
Thanks, Yendo. Chunhan?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, you have a very nice tree behind you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Hi, I'm Chunhan. I'm currently working for the government. Yeah. So for me, what makes me vulnerable is, I think, talking about or exposing my weaknesses or failures to an audience that I know will be harsh. Yeah, I think the context of sharing something like that is important. If I'm sharing with like a close friend, I think it's okay. Or if I'm sharing with people I know how to control their response, I think it's okay. But if the response to the sharing is going to be harsh, then I think that's vulnerable. Being vulnerable, yeah.
The context plays a very big part, right? The psychological safety. Thanks, Johan. Eugene?
First time join already, so 沉重的 topic. Okay.
Reflective. It's reflective.
Good job, man.
I can understand being a positive person.
Positivity, where are you? Okay.
Yeah. You guys were talking about Enneagram, right?
We were a bit.
We were.
Okay. Yeah.
Earlier, yeah.
I still can't figure out. I'm probably a 3. Yeah. I think.
Interesting.
Yeah. Because I had my profiling done by a coach before as well. Yeah. But anyways, about vulnerability, when do I feel most vulnerable? Can we define vulnerable?
However you define it.
However you define it at the moment, and we can explore a bit later.
Part of the discussion today is to define it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, for me, vulnerable is when I see people doing far better than me, then I'll start to have this inferiority complex coming in. And then that's when I'll be like, why am I not as good? Or what can I do to be better? You know? Yeah. So that's when I feel it lah.
I'm hearing a comparison, like comparing what you can do versus what other people can do.
Or like social status, right? Some people they naturally are born into a good family, and then they drive, and then they have a high flying job, and then you're like, oh my god, I need to struggle. Yeah. So then I feel very like vulnerable during then. Yeah.
Right. Thanks. So great examples here, right? There's the comparison against where other people are. There's the context that Chun Han was talking about.
We need to share ourselves, We need to share.
Yeah, that's how I'm going to go next. Great. Chill. Don't worry, I'll not escape. Okay, so for me,
Ethan is always reminding you.
Yeah, I know, because I used to facilitate, right? Then I don't answer, so he will like, Alex, answer. Especially for tough questions like this. So for me, I feel most vulnerable when I need to reveal something about myself to people that either I believe have power over me, sometimes like bosses, or people who are close to me, that might result in rejection or judgment. Right? So for close people, it's more rejection, right? And I was reading about attachment theory recently, or just telling Ethan. Right? So sometimes there's this fear of abandonment. I think I'm a ambivalent attachment type. So Ethan, stop giving me that look. Okay, so I suspect.
Ethan, why are you judging him with that look now?
No, it's not judging. It's wow. I didn't know that.
I'm feeling so vulnerable.
He's feeling
right now.
vulnerable right now.
I'm trying to be authentic, man.
I'm trying to help you by going, wow.
That was not the facial expression I read. Okay.
That's your ability to read my face.
Remember we did a session on assumptions? Okay, so that's for me.
Assume. Yeah, thank you, boy.
So that's for me. The if it's for people that are close to me and I reveal certain fears or certain behaviors that I might interpret as them rejecting me, that makes me feel very, very vulnerable. And that's kind of where I am.
Yeah,
so Ethan is anchoring, right? So Jeffrey is anchoring, so Ethan, you go.
Yeah, so when I feel most vulnerable, I think I felt so many times vulnerable in my life that it's funny to talk about vulnerability, because I think I kind of jump into vulnerability. Like I've constantly been in spaces. So say I'm good at anything, meaning leaving myself to be attacked by other people by saying I'm good at something. So my self-assurance might be here, but actually it takes a lot of vulnerability to say I'm good at something, waiting for other people to attack you on those grounds. because it's very real. Like the moment you say, I'm really good at this, and people start telling you, nah, you're gonna start feeling really trashy right afterwards. It's real, it's a real situation. So actually I found out that when I say things that I'm good at, especially like with parents, and they go like, yeah, and then just kind of just brush you off. Or even like when you share really things that mean a lot to you, everybody has talked about that, and people kind of just brush you off. So those are the usual moments I feel most vulnerable.
Interesting. Even though you have self-assurance, right?
Yes.
So
you still can feel like, ugh.
So interesting thing is that I think people with self-assurance, on the outside, people may see them as very stable, very anchored, but sometimes, on the inside, they could still be feeling vulnerable as well. Still, right?
Yep.
Thanks, Ethan. Jeff.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So what makes me most vulnerable is I think sometimes when I'm working on projects alone and I don't feel that I belong to a group, that makes me vulnerable lah. So I constantly need like sort of like support from team members to sort of know that we are working on this together. So sometimes when things got sidetracked and I felt that, oh, how come it seems like I'm the only person working? That sense of loneliness does make me feel vulnerable, a little bit insecure, and like so it would trigger, right? Also, I saw Dennis who just joined us. So hi Dennis.
Dennis, yeah.
So we are just exploring a question with everybody. So we're just asking everyone to just introduce themselves and just explore that question to reflect on what makes you most vulnerable.
Or what makes you feel vulnerable.
Yeah, or what makes you feel vulnerable.
Sorry, I just hi there. Hi.
Hi.
Sorry, this is my first meetup with the group, so I'm not really sure how it works. But yeah, so I didn't know there was audience participation. So okay, here I am. Yeah, sorry. I really didn't know.
That must feel vulnerable also.
Yeah, thank you for being vulnerable with us right now.
Yeah. So when do I feel vulnerable? I guess I guess in uncertain situations, I suppose, because I like familiarity and, familiar ways of doing things and all that. So sometimes when things are thrown off balance and there's some uncertainty, I guess I may feel a bit vulnerable because I may not know what to expect.
Like now?
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool. Yeah. Thank you very much for being vulnerable with us.
Okay.
By the way,
no worries. I'm just currently doing something else. Okay, so you guys carry on. Yeah.
How do we pronounce your name? Is it Dennis or Denise or?
It's Denise. It's
Denise. All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Denise.
Thank you.
We have Hailey and Nana who have just joined us as well. So just a quick introduction and share a little bit about what makes you feel vulnerable.
I think it's Hailey, right?
Hailey. Oh, sorry.
Hailey.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry, I just finished my dinner also, so I'm munching away.
No worries.
Yeah, hi everyone. Nice to meet you. I'm Hailey. I connected with Alex about 2 weeks ago, right? To discuss about strengths. Personally, I'm an enthusiast of strengths. I'm hoping to pursue this long term. And I will be happy to share a little bit more about myself afterwards as well, if you're up for a chat. But personally, in terms of what makes me feel vulnerable, I would say that, maybe it's something similar to what Denise shared also, that, being in an environment where, excuse me, I don't know anyone. I don't know what the processes to work with. I don't know any relevant knowledge, right? Because change, I think, for most people is very scary, and myself without exception, right? And I think also what makes me feel vulnerable as well is showing my emotions, because I think, in the society that we have, most of us have been brought up in, I think, we have been taught that we have to always put up a brave front. So asking for help or showing any negative emotions makes me feel vulnerable.
Mm.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it has to do with culture, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Sorry.
Thanks,
My
Haley.
pet topic, sorry.
Ethan has a lot to say about that.
Yes, many pet topics. How about Nana?
You made me vulnerable now. Yeah. Hi, Nana.
Hello. Sorry, I was late. So I don't know where has the topic stopped until.
He hasn't gone anywhere other than we're still talking about vulnerability. What makes you vulnerable?
Yeah. So
What
quick
makes me
introduction of
vulnerable?
yourself and what makes you feel vulnerable.
Okay, my name is Nana. So I work as a trainer. So what makes me feel vulnerable? When people knows my secret.
Hmm.
When people knows my secret, yes. Like know my things, and they may use it against me later on.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
In
that's great.
office is yeah, it's like that.
Yep. Understood.
Oh, right. So we need to keep a lot of secrets from people to feel invulnerable. It almost seems like.
At least if they don't know your secret, they can't use that against you. You see.
This is why today's topic will be very interesting. I actually have a counterpoint to that, but it's okay.
I'm not saying that is the way. I'm just saying that's what I'm hearing.
I just say no. That's why I said today will be very interesting because it will be a great discussion around this. I'm just saying.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Thanks for sharing, Anna.
Yeah.
Ethan, you make me feel vulnerable.
I always make you feel vulnerable. What are you talking about?
You guys are so vulnerable now only, not in all the other conversations, but seems like it's today.
Most of the time we're just completely, like we can put out the invisible front. Today cannot. Right?
Yeah, today it's just pure vulnerable. It's very raw, right? This
everything up. No more masks. So Jeffers, over to you.
Okay, thanks for sharing all your thoughts around that. I thought what I could do is just to maybe share a bit more about what are some of the common definitions out there about what's vulnerability as well as authenticity, because so far into what we have talked so far, we talked about vulnerability, but we haven't talked about what is authenticity, right? So I thought I'll just share a couple of common definitions that was used, and then we'll explore a bit on that topic, maybe hearing some views from some of you. So give me a moment, let me share screen. Can I share screen?
Cannot. You can.
All right.
I cannot give him rights, right?
Yes,
only you can.
You are co-hosted.
Okay.
Oh, I am?
Yep.
Okay.
He's now co-host too.
All right. Let me see. Let me screen share.
Oh, yes, slides.
Yeah. So I thought we need to be rooted somewhere, right? So otherwise, the definition of vulnerability can go all over the place, right? So I think what Pei Ling has mentioned, right? I think you're a follower of Brené Brown's work, right? And vulnerability is sort of a pet topic, right? She's a social researcher, first started to research on the topic of shame through the interviews and sort of focus group discussion. But I think research up to 6 years of worth of research, and later on when she start to sort of analyze, right, what were some of the insights, and this whole concept of vulnerability came about from her own research area, and therefore when she started to speak around it during the TED talk, it has like 4 million views, and people resonated with the message. So I thought I'd just start to mention some of the definition. I think the definition in which she attribute to vulnerability is uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure, right? But she also said that vulnerability is not weakness, it's our most accurate measure of courage. So when the barrier is our belief about vulnerability, the question comes, are we willing to show up and be seen when we can't control the outcome? When the barrier to vulnerability is about safety, the question becomes, are we willing to create courageous spaces so we can be fully seen? So I thought some of it was sort of mentioned by some of you, right, who just shared earlier, what makes you most vulnerable, right? There's a sense of uncertainty around the context that you're in. There's also a sense of like risk of sharing your certain feelings, right? That's emotional exposure. And it also means like there's a sense of taking certain risks, right? So Ethan also mentioned about right, even though he's self-assured, but he has to take the risk to tell people I'm good enough, yet still hold a space and wait for whether are people is going to attack him next. So now this is the difference between sort of like the definition of vulnerability. Now let's take a look a bit on what authenticity means, right? So I sort of script it, scour through the internet, a couple of research, look through a couple of definition, and I thought this one definition sort of speaks true lah in terms of what I thought was a good definition, right? So while there are many definitions out there, right, one common definition of being authentic is really living your life according to your own values and goals rather than those of other people, right? Put simply, authenticity means you're true to your own personality, values, and spirit, regardless of the pressure that you're under to act otherwise. You're honest with yourself and with others, and you take responsibility for your mistakes. Your values, ideals, and actions align. As a result, you come across as genuine and you're willing to accept the consequences of being true to what you consider to be right. So
I think it also sounds a little bit like congruence, right? So when a person is authentic, they are congruent in themselves.
Yeah. And I thought, okay, maybe just to draw a bit of connection, I thought I will share a story. I think some of you may have already heard about it before. I think Ethan and especially Alex or Chunhan may have heard, right? So earlier this year, when I was doing training, right? So I was supposed to facilitate one of these piece where I was not very comfortable with because I'm not the subject matter expert. But yet, this piece of work I need to facilitate. So when I started out first designing the whole session and I bounced it through my bosses and my stakeholders, so they give me a lot of like suggestions, right? Oh, this is what you need to do. This is the questions that you need to ask. This is how you should facilitate. So what I did in my very early design, right, when I think leading up to the preparation and to the facilitation, what I did was I really prepared script, right, of what to say even at the opening, and I even prepared like, okay, what to say. My bosses say I need to say this thing to debrief them, so I need to write in this like powerful statement, right? So I make sure that after I finish that activity and get the participants done in the activity, I need to make sure this is mentioned. So I deliberately crafted that. It was about a half-day session, and I remember just the night before I was like facing a bit of a panic attack because I'm not sure whether I can remember all my script at that moment, and I'm not sure how well it would turn out. Part of my preparation, I sort of sunk a bit into a bit of anxiety. I start to question myself like, oh, am I really good enough as a facilitator? I don't think I'm the expert. I start to have these questions, right? And I say like, I'm not good enough. I don't think I can do this, and I think I'm just gonna fail and flunk tomorrow. So the next day morning when I wake up just before the training, I tried to memorize the script again. And I remember when I sat into the training and I delivered the facilitation, I was really memorizing line by line, right? I asked the right questions at the right time when people answer the questions, and then I knew what was the next thing to mention. And then I delivered it as according to the plan. When I received the evaluation feedback, I was a bit surprised, right? So the score was quite low, and I didn't expect people would say that, oh, this guy doesn't seem to know what he's saying. It felt that whatever he was saying was motherhood statements, or it was sort of a canned response, right? I was a bit taken aback for a couple of weeks, right? And I at that moment in time, I was thinking like, oh, would I be am I really suited out or cut out to be a trainer or facilitator, right? In the role that I'm in, right? I'm in a learning and design space, right? And I think this thought came along for quite some time, and it was leading up to the next training because it was the same run, but a next group of people. I'm due to do that again. So I got the stress and I got the pressure, right? Because like the first time around, I didn't do well. I got a low score. What if I screwed up again? So I had a lot of all these thoughts that pop up in my head, like, shucks, man, it's like, I don't think I'm going to do well. So back to my own self-soothing behavior, I went to prepare again, right? So the night before the same whole cycle begin, I prepared the script. But I think it was until about 1 a.m. when I prepared, right? I sort of reached a point where I question myself, like, I think whatever I'm going to do next is still not going to work out. And I remember telling myself that I was at a point that I was so drained that I just decided to, like, I say, like, screw this thing. I'm just not going to think about it. I'm not going to follow the script tomorrow. I'm just going to show up and respond who I am tomorrow. Right. So I told myself I prepared the best I could be. Tomorrow, I'm just going to chuck the script and I'm just going to deliver as it is. The next day when I showed up, right, I decided not to recap anything. I just went in straight early on before the facilitation, introduced myself to everybody, having small talks, and I just facilitate as and when it comes to me and what comes to me, right? So based on the questions that comes to me that was most reasonable, based on the response as I respond to the participants, right? And to be honest, I never felt so true to myself at that moment because I felt that I was in flow, right? I felt that I was whatever comes to me was the wisdom that I need to answer the questions based on what I hear. It wasn't canned. It wasn't based on the script that I need to made up. I basically just showed up and respond to what showed up. I thought that was the best I could do. And little did I know, at the end of the facilitation, one participant came up to me that I don't know what you did there, but you felt really authentic the way you just did. I was a bit surprised. I took look at the evals again, and then I realized that many of them really mentioned that, hey, that guy is authentic in the way he speaks. Now, I didn't know what I did there, but I knew at that moment I took a risk, right? And it was uncertain. I didn't listen to the words of what people told me and thought that was the most important thing to say. I sort of knew it, but I internalized it and I made it my own. And I just run with it and just showed up with my own courage lah. And as a result of that, the effect of it is people feel that I was authentic in my approach. Right. So I share this story not it's just also a way of to help us to draw a bit of relevance to, okay, what does it mean to be vulnerable and authentic? And at least the way I see it, uh, as of now, or at least my current thinking is that your ability to authentic is rooted in your own willingness and capacity to be vulnerable, right? I think I mentioned about willingness. One is, I think many of us here mentioned whether it is. I mean, sometimes we feel we don't want, right? There's fear, right? And it holds us back, right? But the willingness is whether we are willing to open up during certain contexts, certain scenarios, or even certain people where you try opening up to and it work out, right? So your context is important, right? The willingness, the capacity as well, right? So how far are you? To what extent, right? Are you also able to be vulnerable, right? And if your big boss asks for deadlines, suddenly are you going to be vulnerable to show up to your big boss? And also depends on the nature of the relationship. So at least that's my own current experience. But I thought I'll just pause here for a moment and maybe I just hear from open up to the group, right? And hear what are your own thoughts, like what uh, agree, disagree, what resonated with you, or any comments.
Call bullshit if you want.
Again?
Call bullshit if you want.
Yeah, or call bullshit if you want. Yes, feel free. Right, it's a conversation, right? So,
Okay,
yeah.
Let me start. So I love how you put. I love a couple of things that you described. First, you were very authentic and vulnerable in sharing your story. So thank you very much. The slides where you shared about vulnerability and what Brene Brown spoke about, I love that because it got some of the questions got me thinking, right? And I remember in Brene Brown's, I think it was a Netflix program, right? She said that there is no courage without vulnerability. In fact, she went on stage and she went to ask people to say to on whether they can think of a time in their life whereby they how do I put it? whereby they needed courage, but wasn't a vulnerable situation. Right? She placed it in a much better place, right? So the time when we really need courage is when we are placed in a vulnerable position or circumstance. So that's great. The question that I have though was the one on the slide on authenticity, right? Where you say that, oh, we are true to our personality, our values, our beliefs even, right? I think. So that seems to imply that people need to have clarity over like their values, or in some ways our strengths or motivations and things like that. And my experience is that, well, many people aren't that self-aware or that clear about what their own motivations, values, beliefs are. Then how does that tie back to how can I be authentic to that when I don't even know what that is for myself?
So I think there are a couple of things, right? And I think clarity is one of them, right? So how clear you are is something that basically on what you articulate, right? As you get more self-aware. There's also another thing in terms of even when you're not clear, but there's a felt sense. When somebody said something that you just feel is not right, are you willing to speak up about that? Or is that something that you're willing to speak up? That comes courage as well, right? So I felt that is beyond just clarity. What about the support around you? Because if it's just your pure will to do that, unless you're extremely self-assured like Ethan, then maybe your pure will can drive through things. But many of the times, I think it's also the relationship around the people that you have. Like there's certain people in which you can be more vulnerable, and you're willing to open up more. And sometimes in a certain work context, the typical situation is, can I be vulnerable to my supervisor? For some of you, you could, right? Because there's a nature of relationship that's being established. But for some of you, you can't, right? And sometimes I think, besides your own will to want to do that, which we could, are there any like support systems around you that can support that as well, right? An example is if I'm self-aware, of course I can navigate it. But if I'm not even self-aware, then I do not have any capacity to even do that, right? Which is why we talk a bit about the capacity to be vulnerable as well. Right. So that's my response. I don't know, Ethan or anyone else has any comments or anything you want to respond.
I can talk about this forever, so I want everybody else to talk first. It's a classic Ethan statement, sorry.
Yeah, give him the mic and then he will never give it back. Yendo, what do you think?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think the point about values, I think, comes very close to the things that we see quite a lot. I think it's very hard if you don't know what's important. It's very hard then to actually have a voice. And I like the point about linking that, I think, to the courage bit. And, you know, if you believe something strongly and you put it out there, you are going to be vulnerable because not everybody's going to agree with you, you know. I suspect that as long as you don't do it like Donald Trump, you should be okay in most circumstances.
Yeah.
Landing statement there. Sorry, just really great statement. Anybody else?
Yeah. Anyone else?
You know, I sort of realized that for me to articulate my values is something that's quite challenging. Because like what Yenda has mentioned, sometimes if you put it out there, people may challenge you. And given that I've got high harmony, so I find myself maybe talking about my values, but if I get challenged, I will start to try to understand where the other person is coming from instead. And many times I find that I can very well understand why this person is coming from in their position. So because of that, I get lost in all the different viewpoints because everything sounds like everything makes sense. So I think the tendency of the Enneagram type 9 is that because of our ability to see so many viewpoints, right? Sometimes we do get, maybe I speak for myself, I do get a little bit lost in terms of, so what exactly is my position on this issue? So maybe that has got to do with the adaptability part as well.
It sounds like an adaptability trait, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
But you know, values is a tricky subject. I mean, just take something off the top of my head that seems quite simple, like honesty. When we do values work, I always say, right, everybody out there, tell me who is honest. And 9 times out of 10, yeah, exactly. So, and Alex, I'm going to use you then as the willing victim in this case. So you've never told a lie, yes?
Yeah, of course I have.
So, in actual fact, it's not
honest?
that you're honest.
Telling
that
a
is-
white lie count.
Of course it does. So the question is not that whether you're honest, it's just how dishonest are you?
Yeah.
So, and this is what organizations do. They put values on the wall and they go, we must be honest. And I have to say, if you're 100% honest all the time, you will have no friends.
I tell you, whatever I just spoke about, Ethan will have tons to talk about because he has this entire framework which he calls NT values. So It's not that people are for honesty, it's they are anti-lying. And he can go on forever for an entire session on that. Right? We can do
Fair
that.
enough.
But that's a great point, right? The values are definitely very tricky, and being able to hold it it's challenging, right? Well,
yeah. Often when I work with executives around values, there's a big difference between what they think their family values are and what they truly believe.
Yep.
And if you can have a mature conversation around that, man, you get quite a lot of breakthrough, because the minute I know what's important to me, man, that's what motivates me to use my strengths, and that's how we show up.
Yeah.
And I think so. I do what people call Lego serious play. And one of the things in Lego serious play is to unpack certain terms and make the intangible tangible, right? Through the building of models. And one of the things that I realized that when we talk about something as intangible as a value, everyone has a different definition of what that value means.
Yep.
And therefore we need to dig in to understand what those are. So I was doing a workshop once, and there was this lady that says that we're doing the best of us activity, right? Asking about, okay, so what brings the best out of a person? So this lady said, and she had consistency, so fairness was very important to her. She said, things must be fair. And all around the room, everybody was nodding their heads. Yes, things need to be fair.
Yeah.
But everybody had a different definition of what fair means. So she shared, and she said, everyone needs to have the same amount of work, right? Not some people are given more work and then others are in their leg. At that point of time, one of the director, which is her boss, was there, and you could tell that his face was getting red. He wanted to say,
Alex, why you just mute yourself?
No, I didn't mute myself. You muted me, my friend. Okay, so the director came, and then his face was red, right? And you could tell that he was holding back. And he said, I must say something. I do not assign roles. I do not assign tasks equally to everybody. I assign it based on their ability to deliver that and who I think can take more of that role and can deliver quickly. So he probably had individualization. She probably had consistency. Both had the value of fair, but both define fairness differently. So
in the South African worldview, fairness is incredibly important, but very few South Africans have got their head around the fact that fairness does not mean the same treatment for everybody.
Yeah.
And that difference, I think, is mission critical. So if you say to me, listen, I'm going to apportion equal work lots to everybody, the achiever to me just goes, I wouldn't if I was you. I just wouldn't. So, equal, so fairness does not mean equal. Because in our world, fairness means everyone should be paid the same, everyone should get the same amount of work, and all that good stuff. And that's not how life is sorted, I think.
My favorite way of describing most people's way of using the word fairness, the real definition is, I want that benefit too. So whenever people say they care about fairness, that's really what they're saying.
Yes, I want to be part of the team. Yeah, no,
it's not fair. Where's mine?
Yes, it's never been. Where's my work? Where's my benefit? Exactly. That's the question.
Cool. Okay, so
I'm hearing two things from the conversation so far, right? One is the definition itself. Even though we attribute like honesty, it could mean different things to different people. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to relate back to what Yender's initial point was what people initially articulated and what they truly felt is different, right? And I don't know whether that's a discovery process, because I could articulate that, but upon coaching or questioning that, I realized, hey, actually, my definition is not the definition I really feel about it. And that in itself then uncover more things, right? So vulnerable for
Like
people
when
to
we did,
explore that space.
like when we did Lego Serious Play together, right? About the career.
Oh, okay, thanks. Well, that's a vulnerable moment. Yeah.
So I want to come back to the whole topic of authenticity and what both Yenda and Paylin alluded to, right? They say that, look, when I put out my beliefs, my values, and who I am out there, you're susceptible to be attacked or challenged, and then it feels very vulnerable. So a thought came to mind, right? Like, when we are authentic, is there a need to defend ourselves? Because when we are there and then someone will attack you or challenge you, right? So firstly is, do we need to defend ourselves when we are being authentic, that, oh, this is who I am, I need to defend who I am, which then makes it very challenging? Or could I just say, well, this is who I am, I mean, if you don't agree or you don't think I am, that's not my business. And then you can be authentic without needing to defend yourself. So that's just a thought in my head.
Should I start with self-assurance person?
Oh yeah, sure.
More and more, I don't feel the need to defend myself. However, for people who I care about, for the longest time, I felt the need because they were attacking me for being myself. So I had a lot of constant attacks, and I used to not defend myself in the sense of not being able to articulate why I do what I do and how to. I think one of my best way of describing it is my mom literally thought that I was bipolar, right? Which is a psychiatric disease that I know very well that I'm not, right? So it was like, what, right? So like certain kinds of defenses would need to be up when you're authentic and you tell people what you really think. Not because of anything, but because you need to maintain a certain kind of realization for them and eloquence in order to get some things going. But other than that, you don't really.
I think what Alex, what resonates with me is what is the level of trust in the team that you work with in? Is there psychological safety? If you have trust and psychological safety, then I think vulnerability is not a defense mechanism. I think it can be a powerful positive. But we shouldn't be naive. You know, if you don't have trust and you don't have psychological safety, then, you know, I've worked with groups that it's toxic and you have to protect yourself.
Yeah.
The other side I would say is I'd add two things. One is, I think you've got to be authentically you, but you've got to be so aware of your impact on others. So being authentic is not an excuse to be Donald Trump, my example from earlier. So I think there's that balance we got to get right. And then, you know, the idea in Gallup, which we find very strong, is do you have a friend at work and can you seek complementary partnerships? Then I think this vulnerability thing can be hugely powerful.
Well said.
Thanks, Yendo. And I think
Sorry,
the
can
part
I jump
about...
in here?
Yeah, sure.
I think it's been interesting. I just had this thought, which is that authenticity presupposes that there is a self to be authentic to, which is Alex's initial point, which is that there can be two problems. One is that if I don't know myself and I don't know self, I have nothing to be authentic to. And that's why that can lead to imposter syndrome, because I'm living a life that someone asked me to live, or I'm living out a self that is imposed on someone else, right? Then the second problem could be that I know myself really well, but I know that if I were to review, I know that I'm an ugly self. Meaning to say that if it really put me out there and I really be authentic myself and I'm vulnerable, right? Nobody in the world would like me. So then like when you're faced with this latter situation, right? Then I don't see how the vulnerability and courage point can come through, because it's kind of like if it doesn't have to be so extreme, like, okay, I have some fetishes or I have some, it doesn't have to be that. It just has to be like I'm a selfish person, right? Or then if everyone knew that I was truly selfish, then no one would like me. So I can never be true to myself to other people. You get what I mean?
Do mind if I jump on this?
Yeah.
Mind if I jump on this? It's a wonderful question, because I just went through something in my life where I think Alex knows about it. But basically went through in my life that being kind was really, really difficult. And so I'm proud of the fact that I was really kind about things. But what was really important is that, so first up, self is transient. I want to start with that statement first. Nobody is permanently one type of person for the rest of their lives. Let's start with that part of the conversation. I'm not the same person I was 5 minutes ago because my brain just changed according to what I just heard, what I just learned. Being authentic here is being what I know, what I've experienced, and what I have. Right. So this is being authentic to myself. This is exactly what I have. I won't tell you that I'm more than that. I also won't tell you that I'm less than that. For me, the part about this part where I am uncomfortable with the fact that I'm not a good person. This is actually, I spent a lot of time on this. My biggest thing about this is I started recognizing that there's no good person in the world if you go by the pure definition of good. When I talk about this is which person has not been selfish in his life before? Which person hasn't lied before? Which person hasn't made mistakes before? The ideas that we have to be perfect means that we are not able to be vulnerable and show up as ourselves with the worst part of ourselves.
Yep.
That's why it's great when we talk about the self, because you will always be up, right? No matter what happens, you will be with all kinds of things that you are, because you are going to view yourself that way. All of us do that, including me, right? So I'm saying this on the grounds of if you're not willing to show that version of you, then you're not able to be vulnerable too. And that's kind of the part of the equation. Any other thoughts?
I think that if you were truly selfish, you wouldn't care. So I think we can take that example off the table. The other thing I would say to you is being human is a messy affair. Sometimes we get it right and sometimes we get it wrong and all that good stuff. But I think what I would say is you can't be kind to others without a bit of kindness to yourself. So I wouldn't go around worrying too much about whether I was the world's worst person. And this question comes up very significantly in coaching. So it's a great question to ask. And if you can't find value in yourself, it's hard to build. So I would probably start there, and that we are talking to like-minded people suggests people around this core care about this stuff. And as long as you care about it, we're gonna make progress. I think that's the key point. And
Yeah. The other one I probably add on is there's no insecure person. There's just insecure thinking at any given moment, right?
Ooh.
And that comes about because, like we say, when we suddenly we feel vulnerable, the thinking became insecure. But it'll settle down eventually, right? When we come into a more comfortable space and we come back more grounded. Speaking true to self, I also I like what I say. Like what Ethan mentioned, right? Part of being vulnerable is also showing that not so good side of yourself to other people. I once heard this particular leader was when he shared this whole thing about psychological safety, right? And what he did was he said that as sort of a leader, right? Before he can build trust or allow people to be vulnerable, he himself has to be vulnerable first. Because if other people see his vulnerable side, then they know they also have a space and opportunity to be vulnerable, right? So that is sort of an effect that's created downwards, right? And people felt you as like, oh, you're showing up as who you are. And I think the more important equation is less of you showing up to be authentic, but it's more important where are you consistent in showing up the same way all the time. And if people feel that you're consistent in who you are all the time as you are, or being your true self, then of course people is going to perceive you that, oh, now I'm feeling you as who you are, and I also have that space to be vulnerable and share who I truly am. Yeah.
I think I would add two things to what you're saying, Jepith, and I think that they're great their great contributions. The one is, if managers keep putting people into the wrong jobs and not allowing them to play to their strengths, we're going to have negative vulnerability, and I think that's key. The other one is, you've never seen me use Excel. If you have, you'll know that I'm totally insecure. And after many years of trying, I'm probably still at a level of a 3-year-old. So there's an area in my capacity that is going to be a weakness and going to be a weakness forever. But I have a great business partner who's fantastic at Excel. And that's what she does and contributes and all that sort of stuff. So I think it's also about saying, well, we don't have to be the best at everything. And I find that that's quite a very liberating thing to say. I've given Excel a go. It's not like I haven't tried, but I'm really not great at it, and it creates some huge amount of frustration. Now, does that make me a bad person? No, it just makes me a person that can't do Excel.
Yep. So it's not attributed to the person, but just attributed to the capability or the behavior at that moment.
Skill set.
Yeah. Or skill set.
Because I mean, there are other things, hopefully, that I'm great at, and hence why I'm talking to you guys, I suppose. But keep that in mind,
And that's very interesting, because when we are authentic to ourselves, we are willing to let go, or rather admit about things that are not us, right? And that in and of itself is a very liberating process.
Hi, Lionel. Lionel just joined one of my friends. He loves the conversation. So yeah, I just would love his 2 cents too. Hey, Lionel.
Hi guys. Sorry.
Yeah, what are your thoughts so far?
Well, I kind of came in halfway at about 8:45 after I got off another call. Yeah, you just popped up on the screen, authenticity versus vulnerability. I'm like, okay.
Any thoughts about, you heard what we're talking about, right? So we're talking about, like, in order for you to show up, we are not always going to be perfect. In fact, we're never going to be perfect. And so just showing up and doing the thing and being vulnerable and just getting the things done is a large part of what we talked about just now. So what do you think about, like, vulnerability and authenticity? What's the relationship between the two of them? What do you think is the relationship between the two of them?
I would say authenticity is about being true to what you think you believe in, because sometimes people can get stuck in certain points of view, and they so identify with it that they think, I'm just being authentic, that's what I want, and then it changes the next day. So it is a moving target sometimes about being authentic. So it really depends on what some people feel in that moment or at that point of time in their lives. So different seasons of life actually brings different things. And the vulnerability bit is just showing people that you're having a hard time. Because often a lot of people think that they have to put off the brave front, the stoicism, or not letting people know the stuff that they're facing, or maybe they've built up this image about themselves that they cannot break out of. And if I am a coach, for example, then I cannot show weakness, because doing that kind of puts you in a place of inauthenticity, because you're feeling like shit already, pardon the language. But and at the same time, to show people that you are just as human as they are is the vulnerability part. And I think that is missing in a lot of our conversations around personal development, spiritual development, coaches, therapists, and all this. The vulnerability part. They want people to be vulnerable, but they don't want to be vulnerable themselves.
And that's exactly what Brene Brown said, right? She said, vulnerability is the first thing we expect from other people, but the last thing we want to give to others.
Yep. And therein lies authenticity, because only when you are being vulnerable can you be authentic.
Yep.
Because sometimes the authentic me, this is just me. It's actually a personality that some people are carrying, rather than being who they really are. Because deep down inside, many people feel very inadequate about themselves, and they put on a front. So this is just me. And so
Yep.
that's my experience so far.
Thank you, Lionel. Thank you, Lionel, for sharing.
Thanks, Lionel. Hey guys, I'm just thinking of flipping the conversation to the other side. We talk a lot about, oh, we need to be vulnerable, we need to be authentic. What does it sound like? What does it mean? But I also recognize that sometimes when other people are being authentic with us, we don't really know what to do with it. Or we might respond in such a way that is judgy or doesn't create a safe environment that actually causes the person who's trying to be authentic to shut down.
I would somewhat agree and disagree at the same time with that statement. I would say that one of my biggest realizations is I was forced to feel like I was invulnerable by a number of people in my life for the last few years, partly because of the position I was in. And there was a lot of realizations recently around this where I was not made to feel, but was kind of expected to feel invulnerable all the way through. So I just want to add in a little bit, right? So when I'm my authentic self with these people, me being judged was a real situation I've been in. So I'm saying this on the grounds of me being a certain type of person, having certain preferences, could be judged for the existence of it, no matter how much my self-assurance is. And that I always go back to this because it throws people off and makes people think that I'm perfectly fine, even though I'm not.
Yep.
And I think one of the major things about this was realizing that I always need my space to be free, to be myself, to be vulnerable, to be able to reflect, to be able to have my own space. I think that everybody needs that. And then we talk about safety, right? Authenticity is the ability to bring the safe space out of our internal world, of our safe cocoon, into the outside world. And then comes the part where how do you deal with naysayers? That's the next layer, right? So that's where I'll talk about it as, are you able to take it when people try to destroy your safe space? And that's how I would look at it slightly differently from the way you just phrased it, but quite similarly.
Yeah. So I mean, it's two perspectives, right? The perspective that you're coming from is the first person perspective of, how do I deal with it when people make it unsafe for me, or people challenge me, or people attack me. Basically, you were attacked, right? For who you were, and people expect you to be okay after being attacked, which was kind of a wonky kind of a thing. So it is wonky, right? It's like, hey, come, let me stab you a few times, and if you're bleeding, it's like you shouldn't be bleeding. It's like
it's called tough love, It's like you're supposed to survive this very well.
It's Asian parenting sometimes. But I was thinking the other way, like sometimes when other people are authentic with us, maybe with their beliefs that runs contrary to ours, or their values that runs contrary to ours, and they were being authentic and vulnerable about who they were, but because it was in contrast to who we were, or rather sometimes to who I am, I realized that I may not respond in a very safe, my automatic response may not have been a very safe response for people, and then they shut down, and I go like, oh, sorry, what I mean is this, right? Then I try to bring it back, but by then it might be too late. Right, the person has been poked and gone back into their shell. So I think one of the things that, as we talk about authenticity and vulnerability, is what is our role in creating that safe space or environment or psychological safety so that people can be vulnerable and authentic. Well, what's the head shaking, dude?
Jeffers first.
No, so the one I respond to your question earlier, where you talk about like, what if somebody comes around you and want to pour their heart and soul, and they really want to be vulnerable at that very moment. There are a couple of things I would consider first, right? I say that is because what is the nature of the relationship to begin with, like? So if I have sufficient rapport and trust with that person, it makes it easier to go into that kind of conversation. But the first thing I'll do is listen, right? That's the first thing I'll naturally do. Listen what that person has to say. Maybe that person. So if I realize that if you listen enough, there's certain level of trust and rapport you can build, and later on, if it sounds like a complaint session, then you can help the person to coach and grow out of to become more sort of like having more capacity to deal with whatever things that making them insecure, right? listening would be what I naturally go to. The other thing, what was your other question, Alex? What's our role, right?
Yeah. So how can we so not well, we talk about people needing to be authentic and vulnerable. Not everyone is able to deal with that degree of authenticity or vulnerability that other people shares with us, because I think it's not very common. Most of us are taught to put up in front, be invulnerable and things like that. So when you get someone who's suddenly vulnerable with you, I'm not quite sure everybody knows how to respond.
Yeah, so I also say I don't know whether everybody will respond in the same way that you would expect to, but the things that I tried at least that somehow worked was one-on-one conversation with no agenda with people, right? Whether is it virtual or face to face, and that seems to build well. The second thing I usually do is I start by sharing first lah, where I'm a bit vulnerable, but not to the extent where I cry my heart and soul out, but just enough to get people to open up. And most of the people tend to, and sort of that trust and rapport once it's built, people naturally would seek you out when they got things that they want to share. And I thought that is also the kind of support that people want to and they want to and need as well. Yeah, so that's my current response.
Yeah. Hi, can I add in here also?
Yeah. Yes, Haley.
Yeah, I agree with Jaffa also, right? Because also this conversation also reminds me of the TED talk that Brené Brown did. I think she also talked about empathy. I think this also touches a little bit on empathy, right? It depends on the situation, the relationship that you have with the person that is sharing, right? If you want this person to, this person is pouring their heart and soul to you, right? Do you also share a little bit more? Do you go down to a level of empathy to share and expose your own vulnerabilities so that this person also knows that, hey, this is a safe space for me to be able to share a little bit more? That psychological safety that we're talking about, right? And so I think, when someone is pouring their heart and soul to you, I think it really depends on what's that situation that you have with this person, right? If this is a close friend and this person is pouring your heart and soul with you, and just now, Alex, you were mentioning that what if I have contradicting beliefs with this person, right? Maybe you are more objective, you're more pragmatic, you come more from practical standpoint, and this person is your friend. So you would be authentic in giving this person tough love, right? You're telling this person the facts, this is what you should do, instead of just going along with what this person's emotion is bringing them to do, right? Yeah. So these are my thoughts at this moment.
I'd like to add something.
Yeah, Lionel, go.
So to answer Alex's question, to add to Jeffers' sharing, is that many people listen to respond. They don't listen to understand. So while listening, people tend to go like, how should I respond to this? I'm not sure what am I supposed to do with this. Instead of sitting there, being with that person and doing your best to understand what the person is attempting to share with you about themselves. If they are being authentic and vulnerable in that moment, our job as a listener, in my opinion, should be to do your best to understand. That's it. Nothing else. Don't do anything with it. Okay, it's okay and all that kind of stuff. You can put it out the window and just be there and do our best to understand people. All right. And to add another point to it, when people are being authentic to us, and to add to Haley's point about telling people the truth and being tough love and all that, I have another take on it, is that truth without compassion is abuse. So if we are being truthful to people without compassion from where they are at that point in time, or whatever they have gone through to be where they are at that point in time, without taking those things into consideration, and we only want to shove them down that the truth is this, you're not going to succeed. All right? Yeah, you can do that, but you can do that with compassion. And without compassion, it's just abuse. You're just, because you have more authority, or a person may have more authority or more moral standing or whatever that is that they believe they have more than the other person, and just shoving it down their throats. So that stops people from being authentic and vulnerable. And the number one killer of authenticity and vulnerability is listening to respond instead of listening to understand.
That's a great point.
Yep.
Thanks, Lionel. I was thinking we could hear a little bit from the rest who have been quite silent.
Yeah. The includer in Alex is really coming out strong.
Top 12, top 12.
It's probably my last.
Eugene, anything to add or any thoughts so far on what we have talked about?
I think, be it Ethan, be it Lionel, be it Hadley, I think you guys brought out a lot of points that I personally cannot articulate that well. I know that there's an issue, but I cannot articulate that issue out. So personally, what I can relate to was, for example, I have this gap with my parents. The way that I communicate with them, for example, right, my mom has been coughing for 6 months. Ask her to see doctor, don't want to see doctor lah, waste money, right? And then here I am trying to be that son who cares a lot and say, just spend that money. What are you waiting for? Just spend that money. Come on, you know, you can always earn back that money. But then there's this gap there because I am trying to tell her my point of view, but she cannot accept because she's like, you are very harsh to me. Shut up. I'm not going to talk to you. Yeah. So just this kind of dynamics makes me think about what Lionel just brought up about listening to understand as well as the compassion behind it. I think what was missing in that situation was me trying to understand what is a concern and addressing that concern rather than just telling her what my views are. Yeah.
Very cool.
Great. Thanks for sharing, Eugene. How about Nana? Every now and then the test if people are still with us.
Yeah, are they alive?
Okay. Still alive, yeah, still alive. It's just that the things y'all brought out is a bit chim for me to understand. So I don't really understand. I just know that being vulnerable means that you need to be honest. Okay, you need to be honest. Of course, being vulnerable means that people, okay, like what I've said in the beginning, if they know that you are vulnerable in certain ways, then when there's any word conflicts, then people may use that against you. So vulnerable depends on who you are with. Okay, it's not that you can pour your things out to everyone. So you need to choose wisely. Yeah, this is what I still believe. Need to choose wisely.
Yeah,
Not
for sure.
everyone you can be truthful with them.
For sure.
For sure, yeah.
Thanks,
Other people?
Fabian, anything to add? I've not forgotten you, my friend.
Hey,
Me? Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Okay, I missed a bit of this things that's spoken about. I'm not sure whether this has been brought up. I mean, I personally feel that being authentic is different from being vulnerable. Being authentic, it's kind of like just don't oversell yourself. Whereas being vulnerable is kind of like really opening up. I think these two can be separated. Whereby you can be authentic, but you need not be vulnerable to everyone, but you can be authentic to everyone. Just as Nana said, I think when you choose to be vulnerable, you have to be careful of who is at the other end. Since Trump was brought up earlier, I'm also currently studying Trump. I believe that he's a guy who will make use of your vulnerability. So if you're around this kind of person, then you have to be very careful about being vulnerable. But that doesn't stop you from being authentic, I guess, because authentic is not trying to put your past or your vulnerabilities out there. Just that you don't play a game of bluff or being someone that you're not. Yeah.
Cool. You want to call more roll calling?
Yeah, I think we are good. We probably went round the table.
Okay. How do you feel, Alex? Okay, let's Let's start the process of even summarizing what was learned. I think Jeffers, since you're in the hot seat, I don't have to do it today.
I can always direct back into Ethan. I think you are better at doing this than me.
We can do it together.
How about
do
you
it
this?
together.
We've got about 20 minutes left. Let's go around and have everybody share what their takeaways are. And then Jeffers and Ethan, both of you can combine powers to summarize. I usually let Ethan do the summarizing because he has this amazing ability to very succinctly condense everything we've spoken about. I'll start. I really like what Lionel shared during a conversation. So the two things he mentioned, one is truth without compassion is abuse. I thought, oh yeah, we could do with a lot more compassion in the way that we communicate with people so that people will be more willing to be vulnerable. And the other one was the great reminder to listen to understand, not listen to reply. Right, and that drop everything off about how do you respond, how do you think about what you want to say and things like that. Just listen, so that you can understand. And that was a great reminder for me because I think I need to do that more. Of course, with Ethan we do all the active listening stuff, but in practice, right, can always do a lot more of that in my life. So that's great reminder for me for today's session. Shall we go with Eugene? Your takeaways?
You already stole all my takeaways. No lah. I think besides the two, I think what I kept hearing was psychological safety and the need to actually create a safe space for the person they are talking to as well. But at the same time, I feel like it was more touch and goes into this conversation. So I'm not quite sure how I can create a kind of safety space. I mean, the safe space that we are talking about. Yeah.
Awesome, Eugene. Thank you so much. Hey guys, our next topic. How to create psychological safety.
That's okay, never mind.
Let's unpack that next.
That's fun.
Okay, so we haven't decided on what's the next topic yet. So that's
we can just go. We can really decide now.
Yeah. So okay, we will talk about creating psychological safety in our next week Connect Live. Awesome. Thanks, Eugene.
You're most welcome.
Pilin?
I think what Nana shared earlier on really spoke to me. I think when she was, I don't know whether it was Nana or Haley, but basically I think one of them shared that when you try to be vulnerable and if the other party is showing you tough love, they are actually being authentic to their values and their beliefs. So that I thought that's something I haven't thought about because I've ever shared with people who are like that, and needless to say, I don't feel very good after that. But I think now that I think about what they have shared, is really about this person being authentic to their beliefs. So it also helps me to come from a position of understanding as to why they respond the way they respond. So, and then after that, I also reminded myself that I have to be more selective to choose people whom I can really be vulnerable to. So I usually realize that people who are empathetic. So I don't know, I think certain talent teams tend to do better in those times. Ethan, why are you crying?
No, because I have empathy very far down. But
you can be empathetic even though you don't have that talent team high up, right?
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
But when you say talent team, you talked about talent team, so I don't have it, low.
Okay, so I've clarified that you can be empathetic if your talent team if empathy is not your talent team.
Other people?
Yeah, Yenda?
Yeah, guys, I thought what I took away was, when I first saw the topic, I thought we were in for an hour and a half of very sort of philosophical type of discussion. And what I really enjoyed about the session was how practical it was and some really great suggestions around the table. So really appreciate that. And then, the example of having to deal with, in my case, elderly parents. I think, Alex, there's a topic just on how to deal with elderly family members and parents, because it doesn't come with a guidebook at all. I think you could have a topic and probably a 6-month series just on that piece. So that sort of resonated with me, and I don't think anybody has the answer for that one. So yeah, just a series of appreciations there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, I'm just going to take note of this because as we go around, we're going to start finding what topics would people want to talk about. So that's a great next topic. Chinhan?
Yeah, I think tonight was helpful. I mean, from where I'm coming from, I think the person I am and my background, where I come from, I think I still have a long way to go in having courage to be authentic or vulnerable. So I don't, for me, it's not a very natural or easy thing. So I thought, I mean, in principle, I agree with the things that are being shared and the good things about being vulnerable and everything. But somehow I think there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of or rather, I'm in need of a lot of courage to believe the fact that if I were to be myself, people will actually not reject me. Yeah, I think there's a lot of that going. But on the other hand, I think as you were talking about their flip side, which is that if someone comes to me and be vulnerable, what is my response? For me, I feel that this fear for me has generated a lot of empathy for myself. So I don't find it a problem to listen to another person to understand. And I find that I don't listen to solve the guy's problem. I can relate to the person's fear in coming out to me and be vulnerable to me. So in such situations, I feel that it plays to my strengths in a way. And the thing is vulnerability begets vulnerability. So whenever someone opens up to me, I will feel that I would just be very willing to open up to the person as well. Yeah. So those were my thoughts from tonight.
Thanks, Shinhan. Lionel?
Yeah, so I joined in halfway. I didn't even realize that this was a thing.
Ethan sent you the meeting.
No, I just got off a call and then I was on Facebook and Ethan is live. I was like, what the heck is this?
No, so Lionel's actually I did some sessions with Lionel all the way back when I had the space to actually create our own podcast. All the way back, he's the guy I was doing with the Chill Philosopher. He's actually really good at this thing called clearing, which is a really awesome technique that gets people to be clear in mind. But yeah, I just wanted to share a bit. Lionel can share now.
So it was kind of right up my alley. It's like, okay, that's interesting. This is what we do. So I just wanted to come on, and it was interesting. I sent him a text message. Hey, it's an interesting conversation. You want to come on? I was like, oh, we are on. I said, okay. So thanks for having me, guys.
Lionel, do join us
Thanks for
in
joining
future
us, yeah.
sessions as well.
Sure.
Cool. Haley?
I thought this session was fantastic. It was my first session also, so thanks everyone for all your sharing. I really appreciate it. I think it was quite a bit of good reminders, as well as more things to think about. And also I think from Lionel as well as Ethan, right? I think it was a good reminder to also hear about, listening to respond, listening to understand. Because personally, my top strengths would be related as well as sorry, I'm looking at it, restorative. So I think, when people share with me, the first thing that comes to mind, at least from this a realization that I've learned, is always to try and solve their problems, right? So maybe it takes out the compassion from trying to solve their problems. But also, I think this could be a great reminder to leverage on my strengths as a relator as well as restorative, to leverage on the relationship to help them to show that compassion while trying to help them to solve the issue, right? So that's a great reminder.
Haley, restorative is number 7 from me. And if we jump in to try to solve people's problems too quickly, we can appear very unempathetic.
Yes.
Like for me too. Thanks, Haley. Nana?
Okay, for my side here, just now, I think Alex, you were talking about what happens if someone be vulnerable with you and how should you react. Okay, I guess a lot of people, they doesn't know how to react. Okay, including myself, I'm not good at saying all those console words like very sad or this. I'm not good at doing that. But one of the things that I always do when someone is vulnerable with me was that I just keep my mouth shut because I don't know what to say. So I just keep my mouth shut and I'll just listen to that person. So I'll just offer my listening ears to that person, which I find that, okay, probably because a lot of times sometimes when we want to say something, want to complain something, want to grumble about anything, we just want that person to listen. They better don't say so much. They just listen to us will do. So I guess empathetic, it can comes in the form of silence. So by listening to them, you are offering a support to them. You're also building rapport with them as well. Then another thing which I always tell myself is that because I don't want to let people know my weakness or my vulnerabilities because I didn't want them to later on use that against me. So when someone is vulnerable to me, I will not use that against them as well. So this is something which is empathy. Since I didn't like it, so I won't do it to them, even though I'm very angry. So I'll try not to last time you told me this. I try not to do that. That is what I remember.
Thanks, Nana. Fabian.
Oh, just now that one wasn't it, huh? No, just kidding.
Well done.
No, okay, because I only came in later. So I think at the end of the day, I think yes, it's important to keep provide a safe space and everything. But I think at the end of the day, I think it's also as I said, when you want to be vulnerable, you also have to know who the other person is. So you have to have a basic understanding of how the other person is. For example, if let's say, depending on the situation, if someone comes to me, if I have time, I'll give a lot of time to listen. But let's say you don't have time, because I think at the end of the day, not everyone has a lot of time, especially if let's say there's a lot of people coming to you. Then you have to find a balance whereby you can actually, some people really just want to talk and talk and talk, right? And without so you need to know when to kind of like stop them, because if not, they are falling into a certain type of repeated kind of thinking, right? And that's not very helpful for them either. So at a certain point, you need to decide when is the right point to point them forward, kind of conclude, help them to see what's happening and point them forward a little bit. So while that, if you do it in the wrong balance, it might seem a little bit harsh. But I think if you know how to present it properly, it will not be harsh, because I think at the end of the day, even though they always say that a certain group of people are not seeking for a solution, but I personally feel that at the end of the day, it's always good to present a solution, whether or not they want to take that, or a few solutions perhaps. But if they don't want to take that, that's fine. I think, and that's something that has to be, at least for me, I will always feel that it's responsible to give some sort of a solution, just in a way such that if they are not ready to take it, it's also fine. It's just a path in the future that they can actually take, right? An option, rather than just staying where they are and keep thinking about the same thing, not being able to think outside of the box. Yeah.
Thanks, Fabian.
Yeah.
So over to Ethan and Jeffers to bring this to a landing.
Jeffers start first, because I will last a while.
So do I share my own reflection first? Then I'll wrap up. All right. Okay. So number of things that sort of I also like what Liner mentioned. Sometimes just listening, seek to understand, and someone else built on the point about just being silent sometimes is good enough, and showing up your presence, maybe just the thing that people need. The other thing that I think it came about as I hear Fabian spoke about, right, is I remember when someone told me sometimes what coaches do is these two things called loving and disruption, right? So you can love a lot, right? There's a lot of connection, but the person will just stay at the same place, right? We're great friends, but not great coaches. you can disrupt a lot, but you just sound like a major asshole because you you just make people life very difficult. And where do you find the balance between loving disruption, right? To help people not only to feel connected, starting from where they are, but also to help them to shift to a better place where they can sort of broaden their perspective and see more of things. Now, with that, let me start to draw back on some points of what we discussed earlier on. I think we started on some definitions around authenticity and vulnerability. We then move on a bit into some questions around like, does our clarity affect how well or how vulnerable we are, right? And in that conversation, we said it's pretty important. If somebody is not aware of it, then of course that person don't know whether he or she can share what's vulnerable or not. There are also other conversations around whereby yes, I can be vulnerable, but it depends on the context, right? Who I choose to share is also very important, right? Whether is it my bosses or my colleagues, right? Or even people whom are close to me or close friends, right? So there's a selected group of people whom are willing to allow that to happen. Other thing that we mentioned also, vulnerability takes courage. I think some of you resonated with that point. It's not going to be easy. You're taking a certain risk, and there's a lot of fear to take that risk, and that means also to draw up quite a lot of courage. There was also a point around perfection. I think it's not about perfection, but it's about excellence. You seek excellence, but not perfection. But sometimes by trying to be perfect in itself, you are already facing a lot of judgment on yourself. And lastly, I think one thing that was covered is really showing up, face your fears, and just move forward, right? So I think having that courage just to show up, respond to what show up, this in spite of knowing that there's you might face criticism or judgment, but putting it out there and be willing to take that risk, right? Whether it's a critical remark that people attack you or whether it's some result that may not turn out well, right? But just putting it out there is a step forward. Now, Ethan, handing over to you to wrap up the rest.
Cool. I think one of the things is I realized I didn't talk about something I also care very deeply about vulnerability, but I'll share a bit about that later on. But I think what I learned most today was, it goes back to reinforcing, right? First up is perception of vulnerability and authenticity. I'm realizing that everybody has different perceptions of it still, right? Even at the end of this session, everybody kind of has a different perception of it. I like to look at it. Bye, Yendor. Thank you very much for the time. So I really enjoy the fact that, I mean, first up is multiple opinions over this. I think it's a very stark reminder that reminds me that in terms of being kind and being good and being vulnerable, it all comes in the same picture for me, right? So everybody has a different picture of what is vulnerable, what's not. And I think we go back to the prone to attack. That's always the word that we keep on appearing, right? Are you prone to being attacked by somebody else? And that's where we look at it as the objective attack versus the emotional attack, right? So there's this part where can you be shamed or can it be used against you literally, right? There's a little bit of a difference between these two. And so we were still treading on the line of both of them just now, but we didn't separate the two, right? So that's why I just realized that we haven't really covered in that manner. So when is it actually an attack that will actually affect your life? And when is it actually something that that will hurt you emotionally, but not necessarily harm you? So I go back to then, well, this is where I start wrapping up from my side is, we did not cover this, but I think it'll be great as we move on, as we go into the further topics like creating psychological safety. What is really the safety needed, right? What is psychological safety versus real safety? Psychological safety, some people destroy themselves doing very simple things, like even cooking their own dish, right? They might destroy themselves emotionally and judge themselves throughout the whole process. Is that being vulnerable? Is that where does the line fall? How do we define this? These are the things that we definitely did not cover today, but we define very nicely today. Kindness is really important. Empathy is really important. Vulnerability is all about courage. It's all about showing up and being real with people. And that goes back to authenticity. Now, the new topic-ish thing that I want to also talk about is this really fun thing that I've actually developed for a really long time ago. I talked about the different levels of vulnerability. There is firstly the cry sad vulnerability, which a lot of people think is very easy, which to people is the typical vulnerability or what most people see. Then it comes into the vulnerability where you start saying what you really feel about things. So this is where you start sharing your real desires, your real shames, your real unhappiness. So first level is like sadness, right? You can complain about life, be a victim all you want. Next level is what you really want from the world. The last one is actually sharing what you're really good at, what you really want to achieve in this world. Many people don't dare to share our real dreams, our real wants, our real desires, and what we wish to be, because that makes us the most vulnerable position, because if we fail, we're going to be humiliated, our livelihood might be affected, all these kind of different things might appear. And that's where I talk about, I used to talk about this, different levels of vulnerability, but I thought it would be a really interesting topic to go back into next time probably. But it's something that will be useful to talk about different levels of vulnerability. Because it's not all vulnerability is created equal. So it creates a certain mindset that people have. Yep. Right. With that, I think I'm done with my sharing. As anybody has any last words Alex?
Can I just say something?
Sure.
I just remembered earlier when I said solutions, right? I need to clarify that not all solutions are equal. And when you give solutions, there's a tendency for people to want to give solutions only through their own lenses. It's like, if I'm this, I will do this. You follow me and do the same thing, for example. But if they have no capacity to empathize and understand you, the likelihood of the solution that they're gonna give you is not gonna be very good, very suitable for you. So you have to think twice about who you go to for solutions and stuff. Yeah.
Have too many stories around people giving wrong solutions and other people following, and then I'm one of the people who used to give those solutions too. So I'm guilty.
Or buy into other people's story and take it as
all
your
the
own.
time. Comment. I worked for four different comment before. So yeah.
You be conned by Ethan and not even know. So hey guys, thanks a lot for the inputs.
Showing up.
For showing up. Do join us again. I just put in the chat box the topics that we have lined up, right? So you could have one topic on creating psychological safety, maybe one on relating with elderly parents, different levels of vulnerability, and then we have psychological safety versus real safety, right? Kind of. So based on this, we have 2 months more worth of
topics about right.
Topics to talk about. Yeah.
Thereabouts.
Discuss.
Right. So thanks everyone for joining us. Do continue to keep in contact, whether it be on Facebook, on our WhatsApp groups, or even Telegram groups. So we will see you in 2 weeks' time.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye. Good night, everyone. Have a good rest.